Well, good morning. Ooh, sorry about that. This thing was amped up a little bit. Well, good morning, all. Welcome to Bible Time. Appreciate everyone being here today. We've got a couple, well, maybe about a month before we start a new series, and so we're going to do a different approach today and next week as well. We'll discuss that in just a moment. But it's good to see everybody here, and just a reminder to tell other members of the church, folks that you come in contact with in Grace Point, that we are here almost, not every Sunday morning, but almost every Sunday morning at 9:30 to study the Bible. And that's something that, frankly, all of us can use. Am I right? So I've said something you agree with this morning. That may be the last thing. We'll see. Well, now's your chance to get out because I will be leading the lesson today. And today let's go ahead and get the first slide up. The title is Running the Race. As most of you know, the Olympics start this week. And so we're going to do a little lesson that kind of has an Olympic theme and talks about how the Bible makes reference to the Olympics. I don't think you knew that, but perhaps you did. Paul wrote, as you know, he lived in Greece in various points in time, lived in Corinth for a long time, and we'll discuss the fact that the Olympic Games were well known in Bible times when when the New Testament was written, and that he made reference to athletic issues to sort of compare to spiritual development, and that was not a mistake. He was making a reference to something that everyone would understand, and we're talking about the Olympic Games and the Isthmian Games and some others. But anyway, so that's our subject today, and our question is, what is your favorite sporting event contested at the Olympics? And be sure to support your decision with your group. And I want to make just a point here. I said sporting event. Therefore, gymnastics and synchronized swimming are not eligible because they're not sports. And I'll be happy to argue that with you later. If you would like for me to argue that with you, I'll be happy to argue that gymnastics and synchronized swimming are not sports. Okay. That's right. This is. I would like to say, look, in my position as an elder on the elder board, I'd like to be able to make that church doctrine. I probably won't be able to, but anyway. Your favorite sporting event contested at the Olympics. Let's talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll get started. Okay, let me hear from you. What's your favorite sporting event contested at the Olympics? What is your favorite sport that's at the Olympics? What is it? What were some of the answers? Gymnastics. I knew some people would say that just to spite me. Don't get me started on that. What? Curling. Yeah. You know, they're going to add another event next Olympics, watching paint dry. Yeah. I'm asking for some serious. Well, here's what we had at our table. We had swimming, and now Morris, I forgot what you said now. But anyway, and we had mine is the 4x100 meter relay track. That thing is exciting from start to finish. Those guys are going all out all the way, and to get around that track in 38 or 39 seconds, just phenomenal. It's inspiring to watch, no matter who wins, you know. And the U.S. this year has a tremendous opportunity to win because we have the top two sprinters in the world, rated sprinters in the world, are on the U.S. team. Although one of those did not make the 100-meter field, but he is on the pool for the 4x100, so we'll see if he competes in that. But so anyway, any others? You know, anybody feel strong about boxing? I've always had a soft spot for boxing. Usually my chin, huh? Rock climbing. Okay, that's a new one. So, did not know that. I guess if you fall, you're out in more ways than one. All right. Well, let's talk about the Olympics a little bit. This is the picture of the final of the women's 400-meter hurdles at the last Olympics. And the reason I put this picture up is because the U.S. came in first and second. This young lady over here on your right, Sydney McLaughlin, won the event in world record time. She beat the former world's record holder, who's Dina Muhammad on the right, also an American. The reason I put that on there is because I'm not the number one fan of Sydney McLaughlin in the world, but I'm close to it, because she is unabashedly and aggressively Christian. And when she won the race and was interviewed in front of the world's press, what did she say? I give glory to God. The best thing that's ever happened to me is becoming a follower of Jesus Christ. I encourage all of you to do that as well. That's what she said when she won the Olympics. She's running again. She has now broken her world record 4 times, and she's running again and is the favorite in that event, although we all know things can happen. But she'll run again, and so she's married now. Her last name is, what's hyphened, I think, McLaughlin something. So watch for her, Sydney McLaughlin. Well, let's talk about the Olympics a little bit. The flag, motto, and the logo. It's 5 interlocking rings. They stand for the 5 regions of the earth. Don't ask me to name those. I don't know what they are. But it was established back in 1896, so maybe they weren't thinking straight at the time. 6 colors. That's 5 rings in the white background. It represents the national colors of all of the participants that were present at the 1896 Olympics when it was reestablished. The motto is Citius Altius Fortius, faster, higher, and stronger. The father of modern Olympics, Pierre de Coubertin, he got that motto from a priest, and we'll talk about that later if we have time. The original Olympics began in the 7th century B.C., and that's why I tell you everybody in biblical times was familiar with them and knew about them. It started in Olympia, Greece. It was held every 4th year, almost continually for 1,200 years. Men only. They competed completely naked. Married women were not allowed to view the games, but single women were. I'm not sure what all that was about, but they marked their calendars in 4-year periods called Olympiads. Next, the first event was the 200-meter race. In 724, they added the 400 meters and the 1,500 meters. The pentathlon was added in 708. Boxing in 688. Chariot racing in 680. I bet that was exciting. In 648, pancration, which is boxing plus wrestling with no rules. You think UFC is a new deal? No. UFC started in the Olympics in 648 BC. They began on the full moon closest to the summer solstice, so they required timing and an exercise in astronomy. That picture on this one over here is a astrolabe that was found at the bottom of the sea near one of the Greek islands, and it dates to about 700 BC. The first event, I think I told you, was a 208-yard dash. The winner was a chef. The first prize was an olive branch. You talk about all the references in the Bible to an olive branch, or extending an olive, just in general vernacular, extending an olive branch to someone. Well, that's how it started. Submission holds were encouraged. Rules were enforced by a referee with a stick. There was no limit on boxing rounds. Someone had to be knocked out. And that calls to mind this. Who can tell me, you men in the room, or maybe ladies as well, you have to be a certain age to know this. What is this? That's Roberto Duran. No mas. He had 3 bouts against Sugar Ray Leonard and won the first one. The second one was conducted in November of 1980. In the middle of the bout, he stopped. No mas, no mas. And he was vilified in his home country because of that. And then fought again later against Sugar Ray Leonard 5 or 6 years later. The Olympics were one of 4. This is important to know. The Olympic Games, the most prestigious, was held in honor of Zeus every 4 years. The Pythian Games, you can go there now. You can see the stadium where they had it. You can go there. The Pythian Games were held every 4 years near Delphi. The Nemean Games were held every 2 years near Nemea. And the Isthmian Games were held every 2 years near Corinth, where Paul lived for 2 years. He clearly was there when one of these events occurred, and may have been to some of these other games as well, because we know Paul went where the people were. So he may have been to others as well. In 398 AD, Theodosius, which means lover of God in Latin, declared the games corrupt and ended them, and so they were eventually buried by earthquakes and floods. The sites, they were excavated in the 1870s, and here it is. This was the 1896 Olympics. That's the original grounds of the Olympics. The Olympic Games of biblical times were well known. There are New Testament references and terms concerning the games because they are familiar to the expected readers. We're going to look at some of those today. These terms are not used to advertise the games. That's not why they're there. But instead, they're used to communicate God's truths by comparing known and familiar terms of the Olympic Games to the spiritual truths of God's Word. So we're going to start in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. I can imagine Paul standing in front of the front gate of the Isthmian Games giving this speech. Of course, he wrote this down to the people in Corinth, but I can imagine that. And the people in Corinth would have known exactly what he was talking about when he sent it to them. He's referring to the Isthmian Games. They're going to be next month. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. So let's take a look at some of the terms that he uses. The term race here was stadion. That's the original Greek. He used the term stadion, which means the stadium. And the stadium was measured by a furlong. It was measured by the distance. That's what determined the size of the stadium. So he's talking about that. When he talks about competes in the games, he uses the term agonizomai, which means agony. People don't think about athletic competition all the time as agony, but many times it is. Strict training, the word is egkratia, which means self-control and discipline. So already we see that Paul is sort of diverting from some of the way we live our own lives sometimes, don't we? Strict control and discipline. The crown here is Stephanos. That means the prize is won at the Pellanic Games. He used the term Stephanos, which was the term used to describe what the winners got. In those days, that by the time the New Testament came along, they got this laurel wreath that they would put on their head. It's not a holy crown. That's not what he means when he says crown there. He's talking about the athletic prize that people get in the games. And then the word boxing means pukteo. That's the word for that in Greek. And it means pugnacious, actually hitting something. You know, you go to these boxing matches sometimes, and these guys just kind of, circle around the ring, and they never throw a punch. Well, that's not really a boxing match. You got to hit something. So Paul's attitude is really an athlete's attitude. The first thing he says is, run in such a way that you might obtain it. Train as an athlete would train. Do you want to win or not? Do you want to win? I coach Little League Baseball, youth baseball, and we practice. And sometimes, given the nature of the players that I get on my team, it's kind of a waste of time, But why do we practice? Because we want to get better. Because, we're going to play a game. And guess what? There's still, in youth sports, it's not true everywhere, but here in Coppell, in youth sports, they still keep score. And you want to try to win. Winning's not the most important thing, but trying to win is pretty important. Do you want to win or not? To win, you must train. You must discipline yourselves. To compete, you have to demonstrate temperance. We had a lesson on temperance recently. This term is derived from the practice of requiring Roman athletes to train for at least 10 months prior to a competition. A daily routine of training for 10 months. An athlete must keep his eye on the goal. We see this in several places, Hebrews 12, Acts 20, Philippians 3. That means refusing to do things that do not help you achieve the goal, even if those are good things. No burgers and fries if you're training for an athletic competition. When a boxer trains, and they get significant training, what is it? It's, 8,000 skips of the jump rope each day. No fats. They're very careful about the way they train. If you want to win, you have to train carefully. And so Paul uses this imagery, and he compares it then to what a Christian is seeking. Not what an athlete is seeking, but what a Christian is seeking. He says, an imperishable crown. They do it for a crown that fades, but we want an imperishable crown, a heavenly reward that never passes away. I discipline my body. He says, I strike a blow. The actual word he uses here means to strike under the eye, to give a black eye. I give myself a black eye, is what he actually said here. Paul did not want his body to control him. He wants to control his body, which is very similar to the attitude and desire that an elite athlete would have. And then he talks about bringing it into subjection, to lead about as a slave. Paul's body was his servant, not the other way around. How many of us can say that? Think about that. Paul is talking about, lest we have preached, in the last part of this, he talks about preaching to others. He's announcing the rules of the game, and he's a participant. I'm preaching to others. I need to live by what I'm saying. Okay? If I'm going to tell others, then I need to do what I'm telling them they should do. You don't go to yoga class and the instructor is 400 pounds. You wouldn't go the second time, put it that way. Why? Because this is a person who doesn't practice what they preach. Paul is proclaiming the condition of the game. Here are the prizes to be won: an imperishable crown. He was encouraging the participants, and he admits that he has won. He declares the terms, and he pronounces the names of the winners, those that succeed. I myself should become disqualified. He's not talking about being disqualified from salvation if you don't do right. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about losing his right to be a preacher, to be an example, to be a witness to others. And you can lose your right to be a witness with others if you don't discipline yourself in the Christian life. You can certainly lose your effectiveness, we'll put it that way. So let's talk about Olympic sprinters, what the training they do. They have God-given talent. We'll start with that. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player, Major League Baseball player. And I was a pretty good player. But I wasn't good enough as I got older to continue with that. I didn't have the God-given talent. So I'm blaming God here, right? No, I did not have the talent. And frankly, I'll just tell you, no matter how hard I had practiced, I would never have had enough talent to do it. Because those guys are incredible. They're just incredible, those guys. And then if you've never stood in the box and tried to hit somebody throwing the ball 90 miles an hour, then you don't really understand what I'm saying. But I've done that, and it ain't easy, okay? Daily exercising. They would exercise, the sprinters exercise and work out 6 to 10 hours a day. A lot of stretching. A lot of people think they just go to the gym and lift a few. No, that's not. They have a lot of stretching, a lot of very arduous work. Proper nutrition. Daily runs, proper gear, tremendous willpower and drive, being able to push through whatever pain comes along. And Paul uses these athletic terms to describe the mindset and the training that is necessary. Why do we think that to win at the Christian life, we do not need the level of commitment that is displayed by these athletes? Paul is using these athletes as an example of the kind of commitment we should have to training in the Christian life. A daily commitment to exercise and train our minds and spirits to strive for the goal, to serve Jesus Christ. We should have a daily commitment to exercise that goal of striving for Jesus Christ. So what do we do? A daily commitment would include things like prayer, Bible study, serving others. Do something for somebody else, why don't you? You know, that's a way of service, and that trains yourself. You train yourself that way. Giving, both time and money. Looking for opportunities to serve God. A lot of us have opportunities every day, and we walk right by them because we're not paying attention. Sacrificing yourself. We talked about this a few weeks ago when I was in the pulpit, and some of you probably mercifully missed that message. But one of the things I said was Jesus, others, yourself. Put Jesus first, others second, and yourself third. So sacrifice yourself. Let's look at Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 11. We'll race through this. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And you have completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as Father addresses his Son. It says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you. Because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son." We're going to talk about discipline in just a moment. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best. But God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Now, discipline has more than one meaning, and both of them are involved in this set of verses by Paul. Remember, he starts with this. In the very first part of this, he starts with, let us throw off everything and let us run with perseverance the race that marked out for us. And so he's talking about, in an athletic way, the importance and necessity of discipline. So here we have some photographs. These are two types of discipline here. The guy on the left, he's carrying a bale of cotton or hay or something. It's tethered to him, and he's running. Have any of you all done that? Did you all have to do that in high school football? You would have to tie on these deals and pull weights. I didn't play football in high school. I played baseball, and our baseball coach thought that was stupid. So we didn't do it, and I always liked my coach for that. But why do they do that? It makes them stronger. It improves their wind. It's a method of torture the coach can use against them. You know, there are a lot of reasons why they do that. But that's physical discipline, where the guy is disciplining himself and training himself. And then the one on the other side is a father, and this is, discipline that is not approved anymore in the polite society, but, spanking a child who's done something wrong. Now, maybe that's not your preferred form of discipline, and we're not here to argue about that, but the point is, a father, and by the way, a mother as well, needs to discipline their child. If you don't discipline your child, what do you get? You end up with a monster. That's what happens. And some of them are headed that way even with discipline. That's just the way it is. And you got to do it right, because if you overdo it, then you create issues that would not have otherwise existed. So it's a tough responsibility that parents have. But you have to discipline your child. When your son reaches up to put his hand on the oven, usually most of you will slap it away. And it's not because you're trying to be cruel or cause physical harm to your child. You're trying to keep him from causing physical harm to himself. you might grab him up by the collar and pull him back if he starts to put his finger in the light socket. You know, you do things like that to teach them, and you ground them for a period of time to teach them. And I don't know about grounding anymore, if that's even valid. I mean, you ground a kid, and he goes in his or her room with a TV and a record player and well, not a record player, but you know, an MP3 or whatever. I mean, they go in there, and they have every form of entertainment. They can, you know, communicate with people all around the world. When my daughters were teenagers, I found the most effective discipline was take their phone away, which is a sad commentary on the whole world, isn't it? But that really was the most effective discipline against my daughters, was to take their phone away. In fact, one time I faked throwing my daughter's phone into the creek. And I got a reaction I wasn't expecting. I'll tell you, I think the neighbors heard the screaming, you know. Discipline. Discipline yourself, offer discipline to your children, and appreciate the discipline you received as a child. And then, of course, this is an example of the discipline I've got when it comes to physical. Too many of us are like that, aren't we? I'm going to the gym. And you go to the gym and you do nothing. And you came home and say, well, I went to the gym. I guess I'm better off now, you know. For many years, I was a member of the Y downtown. I worked downtown. There's a Y down there. And I would go down there. And they had a track inside, and they had some weight machines you could use. And I would get on those for 10 or 15 minutes and run around the track once or twice. And then I'd go into the locker room, the steam room, right, and sit for a long time. And when you come out, they had these two Filipino guys there that would give you a liniment, you know, massage thing on the back. These guys would kill you. I mean, they absolutely would kill you. And you would soar, you know. And I asked one guy about that was there one time. He says, well, you know what? When you get in better physical shape, that doesn't hurt. And I said, you talking to me? Unfortunately, a lot of us practice discipline this way. We have the right idea, but we don't follow through. The common theme here, discipline, training, self-control, and striving for a goal. And in your Christian life, you need to be doing all of those things. Discipline, training. Some of you, look, I'm talking to the choir, right? You're here. We're talking about the Bible. We're getting some training today. Despite the lack of the, you know, ability of the trainer, you're talking about the subject. You're thinking about it, right? Self-control and striving for a goal. He uses terms in this passage. Witnesses, those are the martyrs that are above. We have a great cloud of witnesses. He says, let's cast aside everything that hinders. And the word used there actually means weight. Cast aside the weight. So he's using a weightlifting term in this section. He says sin, and obviously sin can hold us back. But what about things that aren't sin, right? That just aren't best for us either. Those things can hold us back as well. He talks about endurance. And that word in Greek is hupomone. And that means a patience which, you know, that doesn't just put up with it. It takes control of the problem. Determination. Do you have determination in your Christian life? Or is Bible study something that you do, well, when you're in a group and you can't act like you don't do it, right? Is it something you do every day? Do you read the Bible every day? Do you pray every day? Do you talk to other Christians and seek counsel and advice? These are things that are required. You have to have determination. Let's move further. It says, look unto Jesus, fixing our eyes on him. Now, all of you would think it was weird if I stood right here and I just fixed my eyes on Ken Griffin and never moved it either one way or the other, and I talked about the whole lesson this way. I know that you need to be fixed on that because you just... Many people believe false things, Ken. You need to be careful. But here, the point I'm getting at is that's really what it means. Do you fix your eyes on Jesus, or are they doing this all the time? You can run with perseverance if you focus on Christ. What does a sprinter do? The 100-meter dash we're about to see in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a tremendous event with some of the top, well, I say some of, the top athletes in the whole world. And they're going to get the gun's going to go off, and what are they doing? They're looking at that tape 100 meters away the whole time. And they are focused on that. That's what we need to do. We need to focus like a sprinter on Jesus Christ. He's referred to as the author and finisher of our faith. He has begun a good work in you, will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. That's in Philippians. Who for the joy that was set before him, Jesus did not regard the cross as a joy, but he endured it to give us access to joy. All of that's true. We can endure if we understand the consequence. If you know what the result is, if you know the consequence, this is why athletes train so significantly, and the Olympic athletes. Why do they train so much? Why does the downhill skier ski 12 hours a day for 18 years so that they can take 2 minutes to go downhill and get that gold medal? There's determination. They know what the goal is. Despising the shame. Jesus died a shameful death for each of us. But many of us, unfortunately, are ashamed to proclaim that. I don't know why that is. It's not a fair trade when Jesus dies in shame and we are too ashamed to mention it to someone else. And he is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. He endured it all and he is glorified. And this is true for Christians particularly. Okay, let's move on, and we just got a couple of more here. I want to reference, these are other references to the Olympic Games or the Isthmian Games or the Nemean Games. These are other references to that in the Bible. There are other references. Many of you are familiar with the term the Bema seat. That comes up in 2 Corinthians 5, and I'm using King James here because it's not in every translation, but that's 2 Corinthians 5 and in Romans 14, the Bema seat. And we think of that as the throne that God will sit on when he judges Christians. You know, there's more than one judgment. There's judgment of Christians, the judgment of non-Christians. The judgment seat. Well, that term actually was used to describe the platform upon which athletes would receive their awards at the Olympics and the Nemean Games and the Isthmian Games. That's what that was. That's what that term that's where it came from. And so when you look at the Olympics this week, and those guys stand on that platform, 1, 2, and 3, and they play the national anthem, that's the Bema platform. That's what that is. Apothomene, he uses that term in Hebrews 1, and that means stripping down to competition weight. Running on an Olympic foot race with endurance. That's what that means. It means having the right qualifications. Stripping down. In boxing, there's all kinds of classes. We got the heavyweight class and the light heavyweight and the lightweight and the middleweight and the cruiserweight and the welterweight. My father was a boxer. He was a welterweight, which is a lighter one. And you have to make that rate or you can't fight in that class. I mean, you can always fight up. You can fight if you're lighter, but you can't fight in that class if you're heavier. You have to strip down to the weight. Well, that's true of Christians. Get rid of the stuff that's weighing you down. Get rid of it. And focus on those things that put you in the right class in order to focus on Christ. And then athleo, which means strive for mastery. In 2 Tim chapter 2, verse 5, athleo is the Greek word that is used from which we get the English word athlete, and it means striving for mastery. Romans 8:37, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. The Greek word for conqueror means winner, and it's huper nikeo. And it's a word that is derived from the Greek goddess of victory, Nike. Okay? And that's a statue of Nike there on the left side there. So, discussion. Paul mirrors an athlete's attitude. He wanted Christians to strive to win. What does it mean for a Christian to win, and how does a Christian win at life? Second, why do you think that many, if not most people, spend more time pursuing temporary perishable rewards rather than imperishable ones? How can we as Christians do a better job of focusing on what really matters? Let's have some practical suggestions on that one. Consider how discipline or self-control affects your life. How could failing to be self-controlled result in your failing in other areas, which could then affect your ability to serve God fully? And then as we discuss those, I want us to think about the new Olympic motto, which I think it's either next or it's in front. I missed it, I think. Do we have that on there? Or is that the last one? Well, there it is. I told you what it was. It was Cetius, which is fastest. And that's the Olympic runner. But it also is to the disciple who runs the race with perseverance. Altius means highest. To the Olympic pole vaulter, the one who seeks to live in high places with Christ. And Fortius is strongest. to the weightlifter as well as to the believer who finds strength in the Lord. And this reference in Isaiah is really, really cool. I think it relates to these elements of the Olympic motto, and that's how he got it. That's how the father, Peter Coubertin, that's how he got it from a priest. The priest used this verse to come up with the motto, which is, even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength, Fortius. They will soar on wings like eagles, Altius. And they will run and not grow weary, Cetius. They will walk and not be faint. So, the Olympics themselves, the mottos, is scriptural, although they don't recognize it themselves, but that's the way it started. Well, let's talk about those questions, if we can put them back up on the screen, and we'll close in a little bit.